Hello everyone, and welcome to another Singerreise video podcast, where we talk about the life of a working opera singer. My name is Jonathan Sylvia, and I'm your host. Whether you're here for the first time or joining us again, thanks for joining us. Also, welcome back from Thanksgiving. It's hard to believe, but Christmas is just around the corner. Again, it seems like this happened just last year. And what would Christmas be without a little Bach in it? So for this episode, I'll talk about Bach's Weihnachts-Oratorium. There's at least two groups in the local area that are performing pieces of this work this very weekend. There's the Redmond Chorale, conducted by my friend Laurie Betts Hughes. They'll be performing the first chorus of the first part of this piece. There's also the Kirkland Choral Society, which is doing all of the Weihnachts-Oratorium over the course of a few years. Last year, they did part one, and I got to be their bass soloist. I did a Singerreise episode about it at the time, episode 16, where I talked about and then sang Großer Herr, o starker König. I'll be joining the Kirkland Choral Society again this year to do parts 2 and 3. There's no big arias this time around, so I'll just be doing a handful of recitatives. Since there's no aria this time around, I'll not be singing for this episode. So if you want to hear some Christmas-time Bach, check out my episode from last year, episode 16, or come to either of these two Christmas concerts. They are both happening this weekend with 2 concerts each, December 2nd in the evening, Saturday, or Sunday, December 3rd in the afternoon. There's literally dozens of choral concerts this very weekend, so make sure to get out there and to support your local singers. Local choir concerts are one of the best ways that I know to get into the holiday spirit. For this episode, I wanted to talk about oratorios in general and about the Weihnachts-Oratorium. I'm not a Bach expert, so this will just be a bird's eye view of the entire work, a kind of overview. Let's start with oratorios. An oratorio is a large-scale musical work, usually involving choirs, soloists, and an orchestra. It's like an opera because an oratorio will follow a storyline. Unlike an opera, it is performed in a concert setting, without any costumes or staging or props. Also, unlike most operas, oratorios are usually considered sacred music instead of secular. This means that they are often retelling biblical stories. They were originally performed in churches, sometimes within a church service itself. Today, they can be performed anywhere. The narrative thread is what will separate an oratorio from other major concert works. An example of a non-oratorio concert work might be a Mass, like Mozart's Requiem or the Bach B minor Mass. A Mass is actually a church service that follows a standard formula and text. A composer's Mass would be a rewrite of that church service in a musical form. But a Mass doesn't have a story element to it, so it's not considered an oratorio. Requiring that an oratorio have a narrative thread to it can sometimes be a bit of a sticking point. One of the most popular pieces of all time, for example, is Handel's Messiah. It's probably one of the most performed pieces in existence. But there's a lot of people that think that Handel's Messiah is the perfect example of an oratorio. The trouble is that while Messiah does have a certain flow of ideas from one song to the next, there isn't an underlying narrative to go along with it. And because of that, a lot of people say that Messiah actually isn't an oratorio. It sure does look and sound a lot like one though. Oratorios look a lot like opera, because, well, operas are a lot of fun. And in Italy, just as operas were growing in popularity, the Roman Catholic Church put a ban on all of operas during the season of Lent. Apparently, they were a little too much fun. So composers decided to write operas that could be performed inside the church, without all of the audacious and sinful costumes. Besides looking a little different without all the costumes, the music in oratorios also tends to sound a little different than it does in operas. For example, there's a lot more chorus music in oratorios and fewer solos. The chorus can become a character within the story, such as an angry mob. Just as often, though, they are standing outside of the action and commenting as spectators to what is going on. You very rarely see the chorus performing this role in an opera, because the audience is there and they can see the action all for themselves. Opera and oratorio do share recitatives in common. Recitatives are the semi-spoken, semi-sung parts in between the various songs that helps move the action along. American music theater does this as well, using dialogue. But for oratorios, the recitatives are more of a descriptive narrative than they are a dialogue between the characters. And now we come to Bach's oratorios. Bach's oratorios are pretty unique. They're their own special subset of oratorios. Depending on how you count them, he wrote about 5 major ones. 2 of them are known as Passions, a retelling of Jesus' life from his entrance into Jerusalem until his death. Bach wrote one based on the account in the book of Matthew, called the St. Matthew Passion, and the other one he did on the account based in the book of John, which is predictably called the St. John Passion. The other 3 works are for Christmas, Easter, and the Ascension. That third one is maybe not the most popular of holidays. Bach explicitly titles each of these as an oratorio, so at least in his mind, that's what they were. As oratorios, though, they are a little bit on the curious side. Bach had another compositional structure that he would use all the time called a cantata. A cantata is a work that's about 25 minutes long and is pieced together from choruses, maybe a few solos or even a duet or 2, and some hymns all mixed together. The hymns were an important part because that gave congregations a chance to sing along, something that was very important for Protestant churches during that time period. Bach wrote dozens and dozens of cantatas. Some of them he wrote for special church services. Other ones he wrote for ordinary church services. Some of them weren't for church at all. Some were written to extol the greatness of a local monarch. Other ones he wrote just because he wanted to, or for social reasons, like the ever-popular coffee cantata. To create his oratorios, Bach simply put a few cantatas together. The Weihnachts-Oratorium, or the Christmas Oratorio, has 6 cantatas in it, and much of the music in these 6 cantatas is recycled, composed for earlier cantatas and repurposed with new words swapped in. When taken together, the 6 cantatas do tell a story, the story of Christmas. That's the narrative thread that is needed in order to call this an oratorio. In this case, however, the cantatas were not composed to be heard all in one sitting. Each of the 6 parts is designed to be performed on a specific day within the Christmas season. That's why it's called the Weihnachts-Oratorium. Literally, the German word for Christmas, Weihnachten, translates to holy nights, plural. So Christmas is not just one day, but an entire season. And it may not be the season that you're thinking of. That period leading up to Christmas, between Thanksgiving and Christmas Day, that time is actually called Advent, meaning the coming. The real Christmas season starts with Christmas Day itself and is 12 days long. Thus the familiar carol, the 12 Days of Christmas. It ends with Epiphany, a day that commemorates the visitation of the wise men. Bach's Weihnachts-Oratorium was scheduled to be performed on 6 of the 12 days, each time with a new cantata telling its part of the Christmas story. Part 1 is for the first day of Christmas, and it tells the story of Jesus' birth. Part 2 is for the second day of Christmas, and that tells about the announcement of the birth to all of the shepherds. Part 3 is for the third day of Christmas, and that talks about the shepherds going to the manger cradle and adoring Jesus. Part 4 takes place on New Year's Day. We skipped a few days there. That one talks about the naming of Jesus. Part 5 happens on the first Sunday of the New Year, whenever that happens to be. That one talks about the coming of the wise men, also known as Magi, from the east. Part 6, the last one, happens on the last day of Christmas, on Epiphany. In there, we talk about the adoration of the Magi. Despite its fragmented nature, Bach thought of the oratorio as one continuous piece that revealed itself one cantata at a time. Nowadays, though, the oratorio is most often performed all in one sitting. When done that way, it can be kind of a long song. Without any cuts, it's about 3 hours long. To resolve this, Kirkland Choral Society has chosen to perform the work over a handful of years. Each year, they'll do 1 or 2 parts as part of their annual Christmas concert. Last year, they did part 1, all about the birth of Jesus. This year, they're doing parts 2 and 3 with a few judicious cuts so that we cover everything relating to the shepherds. And next year, well, I hope they hire me again so I can tell you about it then. Joining me as a soloist this weekend is John Marzano, a tenor based in the Seattle area. Now, a tenor soloist can often have 2 different roles in Bach's oratorios and passions. Like the bass, alto, and soprano soloists, the tenor soloist will sing solos, called arias in opera and oratorio, that step back and reflect upon what is happening in the story. Another role for the tenor soloist, however, is that of the principal narrator. In the Passions, this role is called the evangelist, because it is as if St. Matthew or St. John himself was reading passages from his own book. Sometimes this means you need 2 soloists, one to do the arias and one to do all of the recitatives. In our case, though, we're not doing any of the arias, so it's only John and myself. The Kirkland Choral Society and Philharmonia Northwest, the orchestra, they're going to be doing the heavy lifting for this one. Even so, come check out the concerts. There are only 2 performances and tickets do tend to sell out, so make sure to get yours early. If you want to find out more about the life of a working opera singer, check out our website, singerreise.com. There you'll find articles and resources all about singing, and even a few about Schubert's masterpiece, Winterreise. You can also follow us at facebook.com/Singerreise. Make sure to like the page and like and comment on any of the posts in there. There's also twitter.com/Singerreise. Make sure to follow the @Singerreise user handle there. And you are presently watching the Singerreise YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to that before you go. Finally, there is patreon.com/Singerreise. If you have enjoyed this video or enjoyed any of the other Singerreise videos, please consider becoming a patron at Patreon. Patreon helps support the work that I do with Singerreise by just a small donation of 1 or 3 or 7 or whatever you can afford. Really, this means a lot to me if you would become a patron. I need these funds in order to keep Singerreise going into the new year. And to get tickets for the concert, head to kirklandchoralsociety.org or brownpapertickets.com. Tickets are $20 for students and seniors and $25 for general adult tickets. And do hurry, it's just this weekend on December 2nd and December 3rd. I hope you've enjoyed this video and thanks for watching.